Hi, I'm going to explain the installation of an automated roll-up motor from CT Greenhouse that integrates with the Orisha system. And the beautiful thing is it's one kit. The motor works with the Orisha system. Both you can get through Orisha without having to go through two separate companies. So it's one kit. And so my kit just arrived, and I'll show you what comes in here. So as we unbox, there's of course some instructions. We have some parts, nuts and bolts. This is the cable that will connect your roll-up motor to the Orisha control center. And then we have the roll-up motor itself. And then there is a small piece here that connects the roll-up motor to the pipe on your greenhouse that'll roll up your curtain. The first step of what you're going to want to do is mount the brains of the system. This is the Orisha control panel. And here I'm in the greenhouse on an in wall of the greenhouse. And a couple tips for mounting the brain here is it's nice to have a plywood piece behind it so you have something to mount. And the plywood piece would ideally be big enough you can mount everything on one piece. It's nice if it's easy to get to place, so not tucked away behind a heater, that sort of thing. And the reason is because sometimes you might want to operate the system in manual mode. And so the brains here give you that option. This control panel lets you set whether you're going to, let you determine whether you're going to operate the motors in auto mode, which is to say through the Orisha software program, or in manual mode. And all you do is simply flip that switch, and here I've got it in manual mode, and I can manually open or manually close curtains as I need to. The function of this control panel is to receive information from your various sensors. And in our case, with the roll-up motor, we're going to have a temperature sensor that is going to send temperature information to the control panel. And then Orisha's algorithm will determine when it's time to raise and lower your curtains, or perhaps turn on and off a heater in your greenhouse. So here I am in the middle of the greenhouse with my temperature sensor. And I recommend putting that temperature sensor in the middle if you can, instead of at one or the other ends of the greenhouse, because you don't want that temperature sensor to be too much affected by the temperature swings that happen more readily at the ends of your greenhouse than they do in the middle. However, a couple seasons of having this, I've never had an issue with this temperature sensor, as long as it's in the middle of the greenhouse and it's at a proper height for the plants. All right, now we're at the outside of the greenhouse. Going to talk about the installation of the actual motor. A couple key tips. It's important to get things right here because we have a very powerful motor, and you can mess things up pretty quickly on your greenhouse if you do an improper installation. But a proper installation, you'll have years of trouble-free service, allowing you to go to social events, enjoy your life without having to worry about whether your greenhouse is overheating. So first is the guide pipe installation. A couple of tips. You'll notice I've got mine at a slight upward angle here. And that's important because there's a lot of downward pressure. You can also see that in every greenhouse in wall is different, but a couple of ideas for mounting this. You can see there's a bracket here on this end. This end I've got a bolt and a nut going all the way through. And so if you have wood, here I've got a wood post you can screw into. Steel, it's nice to go through with a bolt and a nut. So just depending on the type of in wall you have will determine your fastening system. It's nice if this extends past the greenhouse a bit. Here we've got it past about 6 inches or so. And then you'll see, and this all comes within the kit, but there's a small chain here, and that is going to allow this pipe a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of give. You don't want it stiff up here. You actually want this pipe to be flexible at the bottom and the top. So the bottom of the pipe down here goes into the motor, and it has give 2. Okay, I'm not actually fastening that bottom into cement or bolting that to anything. I want this pipe to be loose. So what you're gonna do for the installation, very simple. You just slip that motor up over your pipe. Here's this connector piece that I showed at the beginning, and that connector piece slips in to your roll-up curtain pipe, and it'll slip over the shaft. And then you'll simply go ahead and put your bolt and nut through, and that's a 1/2 inch nut driver with an adjustable wrench. And that's it. You've done your motor installation. So another key point here is, how do you affix this cable? And you'll see that I have it going in towards the bottom part of the greenhouse, and it's plenty loose here. And the reason is, this motor is going to have to travel all the way down here, all the way up here. And so that cable is going to have to be long enough to travel with the motor. So keep it loose, but keep it fairly low so that people aren't tripping over it, and keep it as out of the way as you can. Inside the greenhouse, you're going to want to run the cable to your control panel. Your cable from the motor is not probably going to extend long enough to reach the control panel or the brains of your system. You're probably going to need to extend it. And so if you let Orisha know the distance between your motor control panel, then they will send you the appropriate size wire and length of wire. Important tip is to do that connection inside of a box so that it's weatherproof. And that's where those wire nuts come in handy. And so all I did simply here was take a utility knife, expose the bare wire of each, and then use wire nuts to connect the two. And it just so happened I have a light switch box that's fairly close. If you don't have a box already here, you'll want to purchase a box to run those cables in. And then what you'll do, of course, you'll want to turn off your breakers when you do this. Simply tuck those in. And I, in a greenhouse, like to use these waterproof boxes, and then you just simply cover it. But you want to make sure you don't have loose cables inside the greenhouse. I recommend every 3 feet or so that you have either a staple or a zip tie fastening that cable to the end of the greenhouse. Next step in the installation is connecting the cables to the brains of the system here. So let's open it up. I'll show you where those connections happen. You see here, there's a lot going on here, but there are labeled motor 1, motor 2 on the left side here. And so we have 2 roll-up curtains, so I've got cables in each, but I'm going to pull this out here just to show you how that happens. We simply strip the ends of the wire here, push those in, and there would be Phillips screws underneath, small flat screws underneath that tighten those cables, and then this gets pushed back in. So it's a fine motor skill project, but I was able to handle it, so you will be able to too. One thing I noticed that as I open the box, sometimes this comes out here and it needs to be reconnected here to power these switches. Next step is to begin the programming of these devices. And really the first part of that is to set what's called limit switches on here. I'm going to give you a couple tips for the programming end of things. So what a limit switch is, it's an on-off switch. And there's one for the top and one for the bottom. So the top limit switch, what I'd recommend doing is go inside your greenhouse, put it in manual mode, and flip up that switch. Your motor will start going up. And once it reaches as high as you want, you can toggle this switch here and it'll turn off your motor. Okay? So once you reach that point, you toggle it till the motor turns off. It takes a bit of experimenting, a little finagling. What I recommend is start your motor in the middle, give yourself time to figure out where that off click happens. And then once you have found that magic place where it's just at as high as you want it to go, you'll off click it and then tighten that screw in here with a Phillips. Then simply go inside your greenhouse on manual mode, flip down this switch, and repeat the process and set that lower limit switch at the very lowest point that you want that curtain to reach, and then tighten that screw on here. Another programming tip is that inside the app, you're going to need to know how many seconds it takes for your curtain to roll up and to roll down. And that's going to vary at every greenhouse and every motor. Every situation is going to be a little different. So the way to do this is set it into manual mode. And if your curtain is rolled all the way up, like mine is right now, then what I'll simply do is toggle it to the down position and have a timer, and simultaneously toggle and click start on the timer. And then what I'm going to do is go outside of the greenhouse. Now wait until that curtain is all the way lowered, such that that lower limit switch triggers, and then I'll press stop on the timer. And then what I'll do within the app is input or tell Orisha how many seconds it took to lower that curtain. And then I'll repeat the process for raising the curtain. All right, I'm now inside of the Orisha app on my laptop. And just going to show you a couple of tips that helped me with the installation of the automated roll-up motor. You're going to want to go down to Settings and click on Devices. And then we'll need to click on Add Device, and which I've already done here. And I labeled these curtains side curtain left and side curtain right. And then you'll click on the little pencil here. And then you remember when I asked you, when I said it's important to record the number of seconds the opening and closing takes. Here's where you're going to input that information for opening and closing. As far as motor controls, you want to keep that on integrated. And then the rest of it, if you might want to get Orisha's help if you have questions with. But really the only settings that I was needing to adjust were these seconds in here. And then you click Save down here. It was also useful to me to understand a bit about how these temperature settings work. And so you'd click Programs down here, and under Temperature here, you would click on the pencil again. And here you can set what your low nighttime temperature that you want, and your high daytime, or your high temperature at night. And then in the morning, what those temperature ranges are, and then during the daytime, what your temperature ranges, your desired temperature ranges. And the way Orisha has this set up is you would choose whether it's sunny, partially cloudy, or full cloudy in the morning, and you can get even more specific for those different levels of sunlight that you might have in the mornings. And in reality, I keep it on sunny, especially in the winter. I want to keep it I'm fairly simple in the winter. I just want those, basically, I don't turn on my heaters at this point anymore, but if I did have heaters, what I would do is for Asian greens and greens I want to protect, I would maybe set it to 28 Fahrenheit, something like that, just below freezing, to protect those more tender lettuces and greens. I'm not using heater in the greenhouse, so it's sort of irrelevant right now what that number is. And then this number is what counts. This is the temperature at which your curtains will open. And I have priority here for the peak vent. I want that to open first. And then the side curtains on my greenhouse would open next. Alerts. These are kind of handy. If you're traveling and want to make sure things are going okay in your greenhouse, what you'd simply do is say that when the temperature goes below a certain point, let's say I have a heater in the greenhouse and I want to make sure I'm not freezing my crops, I'll hit 32 Fahrenheit, and then I will get a text alert when it gets to that point. If I want to make sure my louvers are working, or the roll-up curtains in my greenhouse, and I want to make sure my crops aren't overheating, maybe I'll hit 85 Fahrenheit here, and that would indicate that something went wrong with the ventilation systems in the greenhouse.